I keep going around in circles trying to start this video, and I've got my notes, so I'm just going to start it. This is going to be a different kind of YouTube video to the two before. It's not as structured, and I'm not going to edit this pretty much unless I really mess up. I just wanted to chat about unschooling. Any of you who have followed me for a long time know that I'm a very passionate unschooler. I would say that we have pretty much always, since Esme, who's my eldest, who's now 15, was about 2, really fit into the box of unschooling, which is something I will talk about in a minute. The idea that it's a box or something you have to fit into. And I've always advocated for unschooling being an amazing approach to home education and to life in general. But there's more that I wanted to say, and YouTube is such a good platform for saying it. And so this is basically just a chat. If it's not your kind of video, I totally get that. It might be boring. But I'm going to explain how I'm going to chat about this, because I did need to give it some structure. So I'm going to talk about the problem with the way that unschooling, or the problems with the way that unschooling is often showcased online or shown online. I'm sure I've been part of that problem in probably several instances because of the increase of short form content, and also for other various reasons, the increase in people deregistering their children from school and increasingly aligning themselves with unschooling. That's an absolutely valid option, but I do feel that there is so much to unschooling that if you have had a child in school, it probably will take a long time before you fully understand unschooling. And I know that comes across as really patronising, but it is just a really complicated thing, and there's so much nuance to it, there's so much history to it, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of research and a lot of trial and error, heavy on error, for people to understand it. And I think that people are coming out of school really excited, really passionate. It often comes from a place of great intent, diving into unschooling and then start giving out advice, probably not from the most experienced place. And so that can be a problem as well. I think that short form content can be a nightmare for communicating anything. Over the last 5 years, I've been on TikTok, and in some ways it's amazing short form content. It can be super entertaining, and it can really get people to access information that they wouldn't have otherwise, a fun way. But if you watch 1 or 2 of someone's videos, or even lots of someone's videos, but you don't see the rest of it, it can mean that information or education is taken out of context, and this can be problematic. So if you've ever seen an unschooling day in the life and it doesn't look like anything particularly structured or academic is going on, if you just watch that one video, you might come away with the impression that all unschooling days are like that, and that it's all unstructured and that it's very free-flowing. And you might not understand how much other stuff is going on in that person's home education approach. It also is very easy on here, and I have seen people do this, to show a really happy, lovely day, which looks lovely, but ultimately if you added up all those days over the course of a childhood, they wouldn't necessarily lead to the sort of outcomes that you might want for your child if you want them to be able to go on and have any sort of academic career or further education. So that's the sort of online thing. The other thing with learning about unschooling online, and this is so ironic because obviously I'm still online now talking about it, but I can't meet up with everyone, is that you, and I have had first-hand experience of this, seeing people online talking about unschooling in a very authoritative manner, and then you meet their children. This sounds very harsh, but I'm just going to say it because it needs to be said. People aren't comfortable saying this sort of thing, and you think, I have been taking advice from this person, or I would have taken this person seriously, but this is not the outcome that I would want for my child. Maybe they're happy, and maybe the child's happy, not having any qualifications and not being able to access those qualifications necessarily. I'm probably saying a hell of a lot more than I ever usually do, because usually it's short form, but sorry about that again. And I just think that if you are only learning from people online and not necessarily seeing the whole picture, that can be problematic as well. So I wanted to talk about what unschooling actually is, because some definitions and some examples I've seen just are so far out of the park that it's almost unbelievable. Unschooling is a very parent-involved, active, hands-on approach to home education. It involves a lot of intentionality, it involves a lot of planning sometimes, it involves a lot of resource gathering, a lot of research, and it requires an ability to understand research and information and to put that into context and also apply nuance to it. It requires a lot. I'm not perfect anything, I'm not perfect unschooler, perfect content creator. So It's difficult as someone that had a decent education, and I can understand research to a point, and I can sort of see where people are cherry picking research. It's tricky for me to understand it. And I think there are people that if you've never come across it and you dive into it, they might really struggle to actually implement the principles of unschooling as they were originally intended properly and to their child's best interests. Unschooling requires strewing, which is something that means that you're offering your children opportunities all the time to learn in different ways, resources that they might need if they express an interest in something, but you're also supposed to be strewing things in their path. You're supposed to be opening up opportunities and opening up directions and pathways and resources and topics that they might be and subjects that they might be interested in. So unschooling, if you are just sitting at home and your kids are sort of finding things by themselves, that's not unschooling, that's educational neglect. I said I wouldn't edit this, so there might be a big pause here. It's very hands-on. Unschooling, I think, because it's a rejection of the very structured academic system that the UK school system represents, or any national education system represents. I think people think they go the other way completely and they reject everything that school has, including sometimes intellectualism or academics or structure, and you shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Some of those things can be amazing for some children, and so I'm looking at my notes. The idea that it is just that it's child-led as well. It's child-centered, it's not child-led, it should be parent-led. And I have a problem with the term child-led learning, because have you met a child? Have you met a 3-year-old? They're not going to be able to lead their own education. They don't know what they don't know. The parent needs to be leading it, and they need to be able to do that and willing to do that. So it is a very active thing. I'll give you an example. If a child sees a feather on the ground, and let's say they're little, there's a million ways that you could lead into some education with that feather. And I'm not saying you should, because sometimes the feather's a feather and they just want to play with it, and that's great. But sorry, my TMJ is playing up. This is joyful. My jaw might lock in a minute, which will be fun. But you can do anything with that feather. You could talk about birds and the hollow feathers and how they fly, or hollow bones rather, and how they fly, and lead that into dinosaurs and evolution. You could do a million different things. And then you could talk about evolution versus creationism as theories. You could go off on another tangent and talk about Native American Indian headdresses. You could talk about cultural appropriation. You could talk about how feathers are used culturally around the world. You could make it into a quill. You could look at history. There's so many different ways you could do that, but you have to be willing to go down those pathways, and you have to be able to do that as well. And so we now have ChatGPT and similar platforms, and obviously ethics is one thing with them, but you have help now. Your brain doesn't naturally need to be able to do that. But I'm just saying that's an example of how unschooling would work. You can't just assume that your child, through walking through a woodland, is doing science. You can't assume that. They're not learning scientific principles unless you actively teach them those things or find resources whereby they can learn. Because I also understand, and I have personal experience in my family, PDA, pathological demand avoidance, they might be very averse to being taught. So you might have to also then do extra work to find ways of them learning things without feeling like they're being taught. So it shouldn't, good unschooling should not exclude structure or teaching or academics or particular subjects. It shouldn't exclude anything. It should include everything, and you should be willing and able to do that in unschooling. I also wanted to talk about privilege. This is a huge one when it comes to unschooling, and I feel like because of how the algorithms work on social media platforms, most content creators that you are going to see probably look like me. They are probably white and blonde and have mid-level, at least, pretty privilege. They're probably articulate to a point, or they're able to come across articulate. And there's a whole host of privilege issues within unschooling that I don't feel are talked about enough. So for example, my children, and I'm so acutely aware of this, my children can go out of the house with messy hair and barefoot, and they can run around in the woods. And people are going to be like, that's cute. They wouldn't now because they're 14, 13 and 10. But when they were younger, that's cute. If a black family did the same thing, it is likely that it is going to be looked on differently, and it's going to be judged differently by society. And that's obviously not fair at all. And that is a privilege issue that we have with unschooling. Same with academics, and particularly when families are having visits from the local authority, it is going to be judged very differently. There's also generational privilege issues in what is the educational status of the parents doing it. Do they have the ability to do all this stuff that unschooling actually requires? There's also resource issues. If my kids now we're very fortunate now in this was not the case a few years ago at all, and I was really struggling. And so I have massive empathy for this, and I'm not saying in any way, shape or form that if you are broke you can't unschool well. You absolutely can. But there are resource issues, and it's a lot more energy to find resources for your child when you're scrabbling for free ones all the time, or having to do more work or expend more energy to get the money to provide them with something that they need. So now if my kids need a lesson, then I'm probably going to be able to get it for them. Whereas to follow an interest, and there was a video I did years ago where my kids wanted to look into, I can't remember quite what it was, maybe Chinese New Year, and we went to a supermarket and we bought lots of Asian food, and someone said, how much do you spend a month following their interests? And that was a really good question. At the time, I don't think it was that much actually, and it was kind of a one-off, but you do have to consider this when we're talking about unschooling, is that not everyone is just going to be able to have unlimited resources, or their experience of getting those resources is going to be trickier. Also privilege, just checking my notes again, in terms of disability, of course, parents need the energy to deal with this thing. Like, it takes a lot of sacrifice. No matter how much privilege you have, I'm still knackered. I love it and I wouldn't change it for the world, but it does, the combination in particular of unschooling and having to work as a single parent to afford this life is pretty overwhelming a lot of the time. Even if things are going very, very well, still the pressure's there, and that's the mental load. That is a lot. So you've got single parent families, you've got with disabled children as well, if you're, or neurodiverse children, like your children are neurodivergent, unschooling might be very tricky for you. There are neurodivergent children, obviously. I know several who really like being told what to do. They like having a very strict, basically, structure, and that can absolutely be incorporated in an integral part of unschooling for that child. That's what it looks like for that child. But if you think of unschooling as just this free flow thing, that's going to be very hard to do for those children. So there's all that privilege in there as well. There's stuff like access to transport and kind of that into the resource thing, but I just wanted to get it off my chest really. And I've done it before in short form content, but like I said, if someone only sees like a few of my videos and doesn't see that, like, I can't do anything about that. It's very likely that if you see a certain type of video, that video is going to constantly come up, or like the kind of video is. So it makes it very actually hard to get across a broad spectrum of discussion there. I also wanted to talk about dogma in the unschooling community. This is tricky. Like, I love some of the people in the unschooling community who are pretty dogmatic, like, and I have a personal relationship with them. Lovely, fun people I'm fond of. I also think that because generally these discussions are held online, things can come across very dogmatic, and I think that especially for new people who are wanting to unschool, that can be really off-putting. It can be quite shaming, can be unhelpful actually. I've seen people say, you know, child won't do this, so what do I do? There was something about, I can't remember what the example was, but something really obviously needed to happen, and the mum was saying, I can't do it in a sort of a way that works with unschooling, and the comments were, well yeah, basically you should, yes you can. And I just think that sometimes people don't maybe radically honest with themselves, that sometimes it just doesn't work, it doesn't fit in, and you have to just accept that, and that the ultimate outcome is a child who is equipped to develop and thrive and make the most of opportunities that they have, and that sometimes you have to kind of your approach to the side, or your ideal approach to the side, in order to do that, because that's the ultimate goal. Sticking to unschooling is not my ultimate goal, and if I had to throw it out tomorrow, I would, like in a heartbeat. And this is something I also wanted to segue into, is that unschooling changes as your children get older. It looks very different, and so although I would still say that my 14-year-old is very much unschooled, she's chosen to go to college, and so next year, hopefully, we're actually doing the application tonight, she'll be in college, and her unschooling is going to look pretty much like school actually for the days that she's going into college. I'm going to have to be really hot on the academic work and supporting her with homework, and it's going to be structured, and there are going to be consequences if it doesn't get done, not imposed by me, but just because she's on a course and she has to do the work. So it definitely looks very different. I go to an absolutely amazing unschooling camp. Love it. It's honestly like the best weeks of the year, maybe the best week for my 14-year-old. And every year there are teenagers going off to do their exams. and it's such a nice thing to see. It's really confirming, heartwarming, because unschooling, when done well, is an incredible way to raise your children. And yeah, it doesn't preclude your children from doing academic qualifications and going on to further study or amazing careers. So that's something I always love seeing, that they've been unschooled and they've had this amazing approach and a real freedom and a partnership. And that's a word that I really think is very key to unschooling. It's a partnership when it comes to their education, and they have chosen to do exams because it will help them further in what they want to do in the future. So I don't really have a point to this video. I just wanted to talk about it. It's really nice to talk about something with nuance and openly. And yeah, if you're interested in unschooling, I love it. I know lots of people that love it. Feel free to ask any questions in the comments, but I just want to end with unschooling. If there are downsides to it, those downsides should be on the parent, not the child. Children should always have every opportunity to pursue academics, pursue subjects that they're interested in, pursue careers that they're interested in, at least to the same level as they would have that opportunity if they were in school. That is our obligation morally and legally as home educating and unschooling parents. That is my firm belief, the hill I will die on. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. If you like this video, please feel free to subscribe. I've got a couple of other recent videos up about how to deregister in the UK and how to start home educating as well. So please do check those out. And thank you very, very much for watching.